Princess Liravel stood at the tall windows of the military academy, looking out at the silver moon of Vendar below. Her purple skin caught the light from the distant stars, and her long dark hair moved slightly in the controlled air of the command center. She wore the uniform of a Vielrian fleet commander, though everyone knew she was royalty first and a soldier second. "They arrive in 1 hour," her second officer said from behind her. His name was Sorendal, and he had served with her for 3 years. "The humans," Liravel said, not bothering to hide the disgust in her voice. She turned away from the window. "I still cannot believe my father agreed to this." "The Emperor has his reasons, Princess. His reasons are political. The Krathic Dominion threatens us all. But that does not mean I must like working with these creatures." She walked to the central display table, where a hologram showed the Academy grounds. "They are violent and stupid. They stumbled into space travel by accident, through wars and explosions. They have no grace, no wisdom." Sorendal said nothing. He knew better than to argue with the princess when she was in such a mood. The stories about humans were well known across the Vielrian Empire. They came from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They ate the flesh of animals. They fought constant wars among themselves. Their technology was built on weapons first and peace second. The Vielrians had watched humanity from afar for decades, and what they saw had not impressed them. Now the Krathic War had forced an alliance. The Dominion was pushing into both human and Vielrian space. Fighting together made sense on paper, but Liravel hated every moment of it. When the human transport ship landed at the Academy, she made them wait 30 minutes before she went down to meet them. It was a small insult, but it felt good. 12 humans stood in the landing bay. They wore their military uniforms, which looked rough and plain compared to Vielrian dress. Most of them looked uncomfortable in the lower gravity of Vendar. One man stood in the front, calm and still. "I am Commander Liravel of the Vielrian Imperial Fleet," she said in perfect English. The Vielrians could speak any language after hearing it just a few times. "You are guests here, but you will follow our rules and our ways." "Crystal clear, Commander," the man in front said. His voice was deep and steady. "I'm Captain Jake Sullivan. Thank you for having us." Liravel looked at him carefully. He was tall for a human, with short, dark hair and scars on his face that told of violence survived. His eyes were blue, an odd color that the Vielrians did not have. He met her stare without fear or anger, just calm observation. She did not like that. She wanted him to be afraid, or at least uncomfortable. "Captain Sullivan and his team will be working with our tactical division," Liravel said to Sorendal, speaking in Vielrian now. "Keep them away from sensitive areas. And watch them carefully. Humans are known for breaking rules." "Understood, Princess." She switched back to English. "You will be shown to your quarters. Training begins tomorrow at dawn. Do not be late." She turned and walked away without waiting for a response. Over the next 2 weeks, Liravel made sure the humans understood their place. She criticized their tactics in every meeting. She pointed out how their weapons were crude compared to Valrian technology. She made them repeat training exercises when they did well, claiming it was not good enough. The other humans responded with frustration. Lieutenant Kyle Harris complained loudly about the treatment. Commander Lauren Hayes filed formal protests. But Jake Sullivan just stayed quiet and did his work. This bothered Liravel more than the complaints. She wanted a reaction from him. She wanted proof that humans were as primitive and emotional as everyone said. During a tactical simulation in the 3rd week, Liravel set up a scenario designed to fail. A Vielrian squad was trapped in a canyon with Krathic forces on all sides. The terrain made air support impossible. Standard Vielrian doctrine said to fight to the last soldier. The human officers tried different approaches. Kyle suggested a direct assault. Lauren proposed requesting orbital bombardment. All failed in the simulation. Then Jake Sullivan asked to try. "This should be entertaining," Liravel said to Sorendal in Vielrian. Jake studied the holographic map for a long time. Then, he did something unexpected. He ordered the squad to set explosives on the canyon walls and bring them down, creating an avalanche that buried half the Krathic force. While the enemy was confused, the squad escaped through a narrow pass that the falling rocks had revealed. The simulation approved the strategy. The Vielrian squad survived with 0 casualties. The room went silent. No one had ever solved that scenario before. It was meant to teach acceptance of honorable death in impossible situations. "That is cheating," Liravel said. "That is surviving," Jake replied. His voice was not challenging, just factual. "With respect, Commander, dead soldiers cannot win wars. Live soldiers can fight another day. You destroyed the terrain. You used tricks instead of honor. I used the resources available. The canyon walls were part of the battlefield. So were the rocks." Jake looked at her directly. "My people have a saying. There are old soldiers and bold soldiers, but no old, bold soldiers. We learn to think different because we have to." Liravel wanted to argue, but she could not. The strategy had worked. More than that, it had been creative in a way that Vielrian military training did not teach. They learned discipline, formation, and honor. Humans apparently learned survival. She dismissed the class early, frustrated and confused. That night, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about the simulation and about Jake's calm response to her insults. Perhaps humans were not as stupid as she thought. But that did not change what they were. Violent creatures from a violent world. She would not let one clever trick make her forget that. The next morning, she received urgent news. A Krathic fleet had attacked a supply station on the border. Both human and Vielrian ships were responding. Every available commander was being called to action. Liravel's flagship was ready within the hour. The human delegation was integrated into her fleet by direct order from the Emperor. There was no time to argue. Jake Sullivan reported to her bridge, along with Kyle Harris and 6 other human officers. They took their positions at the tactical stations without complaint. "We jumped to hyperspace in 5 minutes," Liravel announced. "All hands prepare for combat." Liravel Abelda, and the rest. She looked at Jake across the bridge. He was checking his station, his face serious but calm. Good, she thought. He will need that experience. This will not be a simulation. The ship jumped. And the war came for them all. The battle for Turthos Prime was worse than anyone expected. The Krathic forces had brought 3 heavy cruisers and dozens of fighter craft. They were not just raiding the supply station. They were trying to take the entire planet. Liravel's flagship shook as weapons fire hit the shields. Red lights flashed across the bridge. The tactical display showed Krathic ships everywhere, like insects swarming. "Return fire on the lead cruiser," Liravel commanded. "All batteries." The Vielrian weapons systems launched bright beams of energy that tore through space. One Krathic ship exploded in a ball of fire. But 2 more moved in to take its place. Jake Sullivan worked at the tactical station, his hands moving fast across the controls. "Commander, they are trying to surround us. We need to break formation now, or we will be trapped." Liravel checked her own displays. The human was right. The Krathic were using their numbers to box in the larger Vielrian ships. "All ships, scatter pattern Delta," she ordered. "Attack individually and regroup at point 7. The fleet broke apart, each ship choosing its own targets. It was not the Vielrian way to fight without formation, but it worked. The Krathic formation collapsed into chaos. "Nice call," Kyle Harris said from his station. For once, he was not complaining. The battle continued for 2 more hours. Ships on both sides were destroyed. The space around Turthos Prime filled with debris and escape pods. Finally, the Krathic began to retreat, but they left destruction behind. "Commander, the supply station is gone," Sorendal reported. "And there are survivors on the planet's surface. Both our people and humans. Send all available shuttles for rescue operations," Liravel ordered. She looked at Jake. "Your people should help coordinate the ground evacuation. Already on it, Jake said. He was talking into a communication device, giving orders to human pilots. That was when the last Krathic cruiser made its final attack. It came out of the debris field, damaged but still fighting. Its weapons targeted Lyravel's bridge. "Shields are down," someone shouted. The world exploded in light and noise. Lyravel felt herself thrown through the air. Something hit her head hard. Then, everything went dark. When she woke up, she was in an escape pod. The pod was falling. Through the small window, she could see Turthos Prime getting closer. Her head hurt badly, and her arm was bleeding. The pod hit the ground with a terrible crash. Metal screamed and bent. Lyravel was thrown against the safety harness, and pain shot through her ribs. Then, everything was still. She tried to open the pod door, but it was jammed. She pushed and pulled, but nothing worked. Panic started to rise in her chest. She was trapped. Then, someone was pulling on the door from outside. Metal groaned. The door finally opened, and fresh air rushed in. Jake Sullivan looked down at her, his face dirty and cut. "I think so." Lyravel tried to stand, and almost fell. Jake caught her arm, and helped her out of the pod. They were in a forest of purple trees with thick trunks. The sky above was orange with smoke from the battle. In the distance, she could hear explosions. "My shuttle was shot down during the evacuation," Jake explained. He had a large pack on his back. "I saw your pod fall and tracked it here." "Can you walk?" Lyravel tested her legs. Everything hurt, but nothing seemed broken. "Yes." "Where is the rest of your team?" "Scattered. I was alone in the shuttle." Jake pulled out a small device and checked it. No signal. "The Krathic are jamming communications, and according to this scanner, there are enemy troops about 2 miles west. We need to move." "Which way?" "East. Away from them. There should be a settlement about 20 miles from here. If we are lucky, our forces will reach it first." They started walking through the forest. Lyravel's head pounded with every step. Her arm kept bleeding despite the emergency foam from the pod. Jake noticed and stopped. "Let me see that." "I am fine. You are bleeding all over yourself." "Let me see it." Lyravel hesitated, then held out her arm. Jake pulled medical supplies from his pack and cleaned the wound carefully. His hands were gentle despite their size. "You came prepared," she said. "Always. On my first combat mission, my ship crashed and I had nothing. Spent 3 days drinking mud water and eating bugs. Now I carry everything I might need." "Thank you." Jake looked surprised at her words. She realized it was the first kind thing she had said to him in all the weeks they had worked together. They walked for hours. The forest was quiet except for strange animal sounds. Lyravel's people had never settled this planet much. It was just a supply point, not a home. Now it felt like a trap. As the sun began to set, Jake stopped and held up his hand. In the distance, they could hear voices. Krathic voices, speaking in their harsh language. "Down," Jake whispered. They crouched behind a fallen tree. Through the purple brush, Lyravel could see a Krathic patrol. 6 soldiers, with heavy weapons, searching the forest. "They are looking for survivors," she whispered, "and they will find us if we stay here." Jake studied the patrol carefully. "We need to go around them. Follow me, and stay quiet." They moved like ghosts through the trees. Jake led the way, checking each step before taking it. Lyravel followed, trying to move as silently as he did. She had combat training, but this was different. This was survival in enemy territory. A branch cracked under her foot. The sound was not loud, but in the quiet forest it was like a gunshot. The Krathic voices stopped. Then, they heard running. "Go," Jake said. He pushed her forward. "Run." They ran through the forest, branches hitting their faces. Behind them, the Krathic shouted and gave chase. Energy weapons fired, and trees exploded into splinters. Jake pulled Lyravel behind a large rock formation. He had his weapon out now, a human pistol that looked small but deadly. "When I start shooting, you run to those rocks ahead," he said, pointing. "Do not stop. Do not look back. Just run. What about you? I will be right behind you. Trust me." Before she could argue, Jake stepped out and fired. His shots were fast and accurate. 2 Krathic soldiers fell. The others scattered for cover. Lyravel ran. She heard more shooting behind her. Her lungs burned, and her wounded arms screamed in pain, but she kept running. She reached the rocks Jake had pointed to and turned around. Jake was not behind her. He was still back there, firing and moving, keeping the Krathic busy. He was giving her time to escape. The stupid human was going to get himself killed for her. Lyravel had a choice. She could keep running and maybe survive. Or she could go back. She thought about all the things she had said about humans, about how they were violent and stupid and worthless. But Jake had found her in the crashed pod. He had bandaged her wounds. He had shared his supplies. And now, he was sacrificing himself to save her. Lyravel picked up a broken Krathic rifle from a dead soldier near the rocks. She checked the charge, still half full. Then she ran back toward the sound of gunfire. Jake was pinned behind a tree, 3 Krathic closing in on him. He was out of ammunition and holding a knife. Lyravel raised the rifle and fired. Her first shot missed, but her second hit a Krathic in the back. The soldier fell. The other 2 turned toward her in surprise. Jake did not waste the moment. He threw his knife, and it buried itself in one soldier's throat. Lyravel shot the last one before it could fire. Then there was silence. Jake stared at her, breathing hard. "You came back. You are an idiot," Lyravel said. "Never sacrifice yourself like that again. I thought you hated humans. I do." She looked at him and felt something strange in her chest. But apparently not all of them. They found shelter in an old mining cave as night fell. Jake started a small fire using chemical tablets from his pack. They sat on opposite sides of the flames, not speaking. Finally, Lyravel broke the silence. "Why did you do it? Risk yourself for me?" Jake looked into the fire. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because you are a person who deserves to live. It is that simple. Even though I have treated you badly, even though I insulted your people and made your life difficult, even though..." He met her eyes across the fire. "Hate is easy, Commander. Kindness is harder. I choose harder." Lyravel felt tears on her face. She had never cried in front of anyone before, but she could not stop them now. All her beliefs about humans were breaking apart, and she did not know what to think anymore. Jake said nothing. He just handed her some of his rations and his water bottle. They ate in silence while outside the cave. The war continued. The rescue came 3 days later. A combined fleet of human and Vielrian ships drove the Krathic forces away from Terthos Prime. Kyle Harris led the ground team that found Jake and Lyravel in the mining cave. "You 2 look terrible," Kyle said. But he was smiling. He was just happy to see them alive. "Second, Sid, we want return to nature. We survived," Jake said simply. During the flight back to Vendar, Lyravel sat quietly in the transport ship. She watched Jake talk with his fellow humans, sharing stories of their survival. He did not brag about saving her life. He did not mention how she had left him at first and then come back. He just described the journey as if they had been partners from the start. This small kindness made her heart ache in a way she did not understand. Back at the academy, news of their survival had spread. Both humans and Vaelrians wanted to hear the story. Lyravel gave brief official reports, but she could not stop thinking about those days in the wilderness, about how wrong she had been. She found Jake 2 days after their return. He was in the training room, working out alone. His shirt was off and she could see new scars on his back from the fighting on Terthos Prime. "Captain Sullivan," He turned, surprised. Commander. I mean, Princess. Just Commander is fine. She stepped closer. You saved mine too. We are even. No. Lyravel shook her head. You found me first. You could have left me and saved yourself. But you did not. Why? Jake picked up a towel and wiped his face. Because leaving people behind is not who I am. It is not who any of my team is. We believe that everyone matters. Even our enemies. Especially our allies. Even an alien princess who treated you like dirt? He smiled a little. Even her. Something changed between them in that moment. The air felt different. Charged, with possibility. Lyravel had never felt anything like it before. I was wrong about humans, she said quietly. About you. I apologize. Apology accepted. Jake put his shirt back on. For what it is worth, I understand why you thought that way. My people have not always been kind. We have made mistakes. We are still learning. We all are. Over the next weeks, Jake and Lyravel worked together differently. There was respect now, and something more. They spent extra time in tactical meetings, their conversations lasting long after everyone else left. They found reasons to be near each other. Asser, the other officers noticed. Kyle teased Jake about it constantly. Sorendal warned Lyravel that her father would not approve. But neither of them could stop. The war grew worse. The Krathic Dominion launched attacks on multiple fronts. The Valyrian Empire fully committed to fighting alongside humanity. Resources were shared. Battle plans were coordinated. Old prejudices began to fade as soldiers fought and died together. Lyravel's older brother, Prince Kael'thor, visited the academy one day. He was tall and proud, wearing the formal robes of the royal family. He looked at the human delegation with barely hidden contempt. Sister, I hear you have become quite friendly with these creatures, he said in Valyrian, knowing the humans could not understand. They are our allies, Lyravel replied in the same language. They are tools, useful, but temporary. Do not forget your position. My position is commander of this facility. And I will treat my officers with respect. Kael'thor leaned close. Father has heard rumors. About you and the human captain. He is not pleased. Remember who you are, Lyravel. You are a princess of the Empire. You cannot lower yourself to caring for these animals. Lyravel felt anger rise in her throat, but she kept her voice calm. You should spend less time listening to rumors and more time fighting the real enemy. Kael'thor left in anger, but his words stayed with her. She knew what her father would think. She knew what the entire court would say. A relationship between a Valyrian princess and a human was unthinkable. But her heart did not care about rules. The mission briefing came a week later. Intelligence had located a major Krathic weapons facility that produced the devastating Nova-class warheads. These weapons could destroy entire cities. The facility had to be destroyed. Lyravel was assigned to lead the strike force. Jake and his best pilots would fly escort. It was a dangerous mission, deep in enemy space. They spent days planning every detail. The layout of the facility. The defensive positions. The escape routes. Jake suggested approaches that Valyrian tactics would never consider. Lyravel learned to see battles through his eyes, finding creative solutions to impossible problems. Late one night, they were alone in the strategy room. Everyone else had gone to sleep. Jake and Lyravel stood over the holographic display, moving virtual ships and testing scenarios. Their hands touched over the display. Neither of them moved. The touch was simple, just skin against skin, but it felt like electricity. Lyravel looked up at Jake's face. He was already looking at her. We should finish this, she said, but she did not move her hand. Yes. Jake agreed. But he did not move either. They stood like that for a long moment. The hologram cast blue light across their faces. Outside the window, Vender's twin moons rose over the horizon. I should go. Lyravel. finally said. Okay. But she did not go. Instead, she asked, Jake, what is your homeworld like? He smiled. Earth. It is beautiful. Blue oceans and green lands. Mountains that touch the sky. I grew up in a place called Colorado, where the air was thin and clean. Every morning the sun would hit the peaks and turn them gold. It sounds wonderful. It is. Or, it was. The Krathic hit my home city 5 years ago. My parents and my sister were there. His voice became quiet. I was off-world. Training. I never got to say goodbye. Liravel put her other hand on his. I am sorry. That is why I fight. Not for revenge, but to stop it from happening to anyone else. Human, or Vaelrian, or anyone. No one should lose their family like that. You are a good man, Jake Sullivan. I try to be. She should have left then. She should have walked away and kept things professional. But Liravel was tired of doing what she should do. I have something to confess, she said. What is it? I think I have feelings for you. More than respect. More than friendship. Her heart pounded as she spoke. I know it is impossible. I know nothing can come of it. But I needed to tell you the truth. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, It is not just you. I feel it too. From the first moment you came back for me on Turthos Prime, maybe before that, I have tried to ignore it, but I cannot. We cannot be together. My father would never allow it. Your people would question it. We are from different worlds. I know. Then, what do we do? Jake gently squeezed her hand. I do not know. But lying to ourselves is not the answer. They stood in the empty room, holding hands across the holographic stars. Two people from different worlds, wanting something that the universe seemed determined to deny them. The mission launches in 3 days, Liravel said. I know. Anything could happen out there. I know that too. She looked into his blue eyes. Jake, if something happens to me, I want you to know that meeting you changed everything. You made me see that my hate was just fear. Fear of what I did not understand. You are brave and kind and good. Thank you for showing me that. Liravel, if something happens to me, I want you to know that you are the strongest person I have ever met. You admitted you were wrong and changed. That takes more courage than any battle. You will be a great leader someday. They stood together as the moons rose higher. Outside, the war waited for them. But in this moment, they had peace. When Liravel finally left the strategy room, she felt different. Lighter, somehow. Despite the weight of her feelings. She had told the truth, and Jake had felt the same. Nothing could come of it. But at least it was real. She did not see Prince Kael'thor watching from the shadows down the hall. She did not see the anger on his face, or the communication device in his hand, as he contacted their father. The Emperor would know everything by morning, and the mission that was already dangerous had just become far more complicated. The strike force jumped into Krathic space exactly on schedule. 15 ships, human and Vaelrian, mixed together in a formation that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Liravel commanded from her flagship. Jake led the fighter escort in his small but fast human craft. All ships report ready, Sorendal said from his station. Proceed to target coordinates, Liravel ordered. Stay alert. Intelligence may have missed something. They moved through the dark space between stars. The weapons facility appeared on their screens, a massive station orbiting a dead moon. It looked heavily defended, but not impossible. That should have been their first warning. Beginning attack run, Jake's voice came over the communication channel. His fighters dove toward the station. Weapons firing. The Krathic defenses activated, shooting beams of red energy into space. Liravel's ships moved in behind the fighters, their larger weapons targeting the station's shield generators. Explosions bloomed across the enemy defenses. Everything was going according to plan. Then the trap was sprung. Krathic warships emerged from behind the moon, dozens of them. They had been waiting, hidden and silent. The intelligence had been wrong. This was not a lightly defended facility. This was a fortress. All ships, defensive formation, Lyravel shouted. Fighters returned to cover, but the Krathic were already firing. Energy weapons and missiles filled the space around them. One Vielrian ship exploded immediately. Another lost power and began to drift. They knew we were coming, Sorendal said. He was right. This was an ambush. Someone had betrayed them. Jake, get your people out of there, Lyravel commanded. Working on it. Jake's voice was tense. She could hear weapons fire in the background. But they are everywhere. A Krathic missile hit Jake's fighter. Lyravel watched on her screen as his ship spun out of control, trailing fire and debris. Her heart stopped. Jake, I am okay. Ship is not. Sorendal, get a tractor beam on that fighter now. Her flagship grabbed Jake's dying craft with an energy beam and pulled it into the landing bay. Seconds later, his ship would have exploded. The bay doors closed just as the fighter's engine went critical. But Jake had already jumped clear. He appeared on the bridge moments later, his flight suit torn and his face bleeding. But he was alive. Lyravel wanted to run to him, to hold him and make sure he was real. But she was a commander in the middle of a battle. She could not show weakness. Status report, she said, her voice steady. Half our fighters are gone, Jake said. The rest are damaged. Commander, we cannot win this fight. There are too many of them. She looked at the tactical display. He was right. They were outnumbered 3-1. The mission had failed before it truly began. All ships, retreat formation Alpha, Lyravel commanded. We are leaving. Some ships were too damaged to escape. Their crews abandoned ship in escape pods. The strike force that had jumped into enemy space with 15 ships limped home with only 9. Hundreds of soldiers, human and Vielrian both, had died for nothing. The journey back to Vendar was silent and grim. When they arrived, a message was waiting for Lyravel. She was ordered to report to her father immediately. The Emperor had heard about the failed mission and wanted an explanation. But that was not all he wanted to discuss. Emperor Theron met his daughter in his private chambers. He was an old Vielrian. His purple skin faded to lavender with age, but his eyes were still sharp. You failed your mission, he said without greeting. Yes, father. The intelligence was wrong. We were outnumbered. I have read the reports. The mission was doomed from the start. He paused. But that is not why I called you here. Lyravel's stomach tightened. She knew what was coming. Your brother tells me you have become close with the human captain. Too close. Jake Sullivan is a good officer and a brave soldier. That is not what I asked. The Emperor stood and walked to the window. Lyravel, you are a princess of the Vielrian Empire. Your marriage will one day be a political alliance that strengthens our people. You cannot waste your affections on a human. Waste? Anger flared in her chest. He saved my life, father. He risked everything for me. How is that a waste? Anger. Because it cannot continue. Her father turned to face her. I am formally forbidding you from any further contact with Captain Sullivan. He will be reassigned to a distant sector. You will remain here and focus on your duties. You cannot do this. I am the Emperor. I can do whatever is necessary to protect this family and this empire. His voice softened slightly. Daughter, I know you have feelings for him. But feelings pass. Duty remains. You will understand this someday. I understand it now. I understand that you would rather I be miserable than break your precious traditions. You are relieved of fleet command pending review of the failed mission. Dismissed. Lyravel left before she said something that could not be taken back. She returned to her quarters and found a message waiting. Jake had been ordered to report to a battle group on the other side of Vielrian space. He would leave tomorrow morning. One day. That was all they had left. She found him in the Academy gardens after dark. The gardens were empty this late. Just rows of purple flowers under the light of the twin moons. Jake was sitting on a bench, looking at the stars. I heard, she said, sitting beside him. Me too. He did not look at her. Your father does not waste time. 2. I am sorry, Jake. This is my fault. If I had been more careful. If I had not let my feelings show. It is not your fault. We both knew this could not work. He finally turned to her. But I do not regret it. Not one moment. Neither do I. They sat in silence for a while. Then, Lyravel reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal pendant. It was blue-green and caught the moonlight like captured starfire. This belonged to my grandmother, she said. It is a family treasure. In Valyrian tradition, you give it to someone who means everything to you. She pressed it into his hand. I want you to have it. Lyravel, I cannot take this. It is too valuable. Please. I need to know that you will carry a piece of me with you, wherever you go. Jake looked at the crystal for a long moment. Then he reached into his own pocket and pulled out an old compass. It was made of brass and looked ancient. This was my grandfather's, he said. He carried it through 2 wars. He gave it to me before he died, and told me it would always point me home. He placed it in her hands. I want you to have it, because you are my home now. No matter where I am. Lyravel felt tears on her face. She did not try to hide them. I love you, she whispered. I know I should not. I know it is impossible, but I love you. I love you too, Jake said. More than I have ever loved anyone. He leaned toward her, and she met him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle and desperate, full of longing and sadness. It tasted like salt from her tears and felt like goodbye. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying. What do we do now? Lyravel asked. We do our duty. We fight the war. We stay alive. Jake touched her face gently. And we hope that someday, the galaxy will change enough to let us be together. That is a lot to hope for. I know, but hope is all we have. They stayed in the garden until the sun began to rise. Then Jake stood and straightened his uniform. He looked at her one last time, memorizing her face. Goodbye, Lyravel. Goodbye, Jake. He walked away without looking back. Lyravel watched until he disappeared around a corner. Then she sat alone in the garden, holding his compass. As the twin suns rose over Vendar, she had lost her command. She had lost her father's approval. But worst of all, she had lost Jake. The compass pointed north, toward nothing in particular. But she held it anyway, hoping it would somehow lead her back to him. In the distance, she heard the sound of ships launching, Jake's transport leaving for his new assignment, taking him away from her, maybe forever. Lyravel closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to the old Valyrian gods. Not for victory in war, not for glory or honor, just for one more chance to see the man she loved. But the gods, like her father, did not seem to be listening. 3 months passed. They were the longest months of her life. Jake held the crystal pendant as his ship traveled through the dark between stars. 3 months in this distant sector, fighting small battles against Krathic raiders. He had earned a promotion to major for his service, but the honor felt empty without Lyravel to share it with. Every night he looked at the pendant and wondered if she was looking at his compass, if she thought of him the way he thought of her, if she still loved him despite the distance. The communication from Central Command came without warning. All ships were ordered to return immediately to the Valyrian home system. The Krathic Dominion had launched their final attack, throwing everything they had at the heart of the Empire. Jake's battle group jumped into hyperspace and raced across the galaxy. When they emerged near the Valyrian homeworld, the sight took his breath away. Hundreds of ships locked in combat, debris and fire everywhere. The Krathic fleet was massive, bigger than anything they had faced before. All human units, this is Major Sullivan, he said into the communication channel. Target priority is the Krathic flagship. If we take it down, their command structure collapses. Copy that, Major, came the responses from a dozen ships. Jake scanned the battlefield, looking for Lyravel's ship. He found it on the far side of the fight, damaged and surrounded by Krathic vessels. His heart jumped into his throat. "Lauren, take command of the squadron," he said to Commander Lauren Hayes, who had survived the failed mission months ago. "I am going after the commander's ship. Jake, that is suicide. You will never make it through. Watch me." He pushed his fighter to maximum speed, dodging between explosions and debris. Energy weapons fired all around him, but he kept going. Nothing mattered except reaching Lyravel. Her flagship was in bad shape. The shields were down, the engines were barely working, and hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. Krathic boarding craft, attached to the sides like parasites. Jake forced his fighter through the chaos and managed to dock with the damaged ship. He grabbed his weapon and ran into the corridors. Emergency lights flashed red. Smoke filled the air. He could hear fighting ahead. Lyravel was on the bridge, fighting hand to hand with Krathic soldiers. Her uniform was torn, and she was bleeding. But she moved like a dancer. Sorendal was down, unconscious or worse. The bridge crew was scattered. Jake raised his weapon and fired. 3 Krathic fell before they knew he was there. Lyravel spun and saw him. For a moment, everything else disappeared. Just the two of them, together again after so long apart. "Jake, told you I would come back. You are insane." Probably. They fought side by side, driving the remaining Krathic off the bridge. When the last enemy fell, they stood breathing hard among the smoke and bodies. "Your ship is dying," Jake said. "We need to evacuate. The escape pods are destroyed. We checked already. Then we hold here and hope rescue comes." Lyravel shook her head. "There is no rescue coming. Look at the battle. We are losing." Jake checked the tactical display. She was right. The Vielrian fleet was being torn apart. The Krathic flagship sat in the center like a dark moon, coordinating the destruction. "Then we go out fighting," he said. "Together? Together." They prepared for the Krathic to come again. Jake had 3 magazines left for his weapon. Lyravel had a damaged Vielrian rifle and a knife. It was not enough, but it was all they had. "If this is the end," Lyravel said quietly, "I am glad you are here." "Me too." But then, something changed. Through the broken windows of the bridge, they saw the Krathic flagship explode. The massive ship broke apart in a ball of fire that lit up the entire battlefield. "What happened?" Lyravel asked. Jake checked the communications. It was Kyle. He led a suicide run straight into their command center. Kyle Harris, who had complained about everything, who had teased Jake about his feelings for Lyravel, who had become a good friend, gone now, along with his entire squadron, but his sacrifice worked. The Krathic fleet lost coordination. Ships began to scatter, no longer working together. The Vielrian forces rallied and pushed back. "Flagship to any survivors, we are coming for you," Lauren Hayes' voice came through the damaged speakers. "Hold on." 1. A rescue shuttle found them 10 minutes later. Jake and Lyravel were pulled aboard just before her ship's core exploded. They collapsed in the shuttle, exhausted and injured, but alive. The battle continued for 2 more days, but the Krathic were broken. Without their leadership, and with heavy losses, they retreated. Within weeks, the Dominion requested peace negotiations. The war that had killed millions was finally over. Jake and Lyravel recovered in the same medical center on Vendar. They were in different rooms, but Jake found ways to visit her when the doctors were not looking. They would sit together and talk about everything and nothing. About Kyle and the others they had lost. About the future they might have now. 1 month after the final battle, Emperor Theron requested to see them both. They went to the palace together, nervous but determined. If the Emperor wanted to separate them again, they would refuse. They had earned the right to make their own choices. The Emperor received them in his throne room. Prince Kael Thor stood beside him, looking unhappy. Other court officials lined the walls. Major Jake Sullivan and Commander Lyravel, the Emperor said formally. You have both shown exceptional courage in the defense of our worlds. Thank you, Your Majesty, they said together. The Emperor stood and walked down from his throne. He stopped in front of them, studying their faces. I was wrong, he said quietly. I thought keeping you apart would protect my daughter and our traditions. But I have learned something from this war. Traditions that prevent good people from being happy are not worth keeping. Lyravel's eyes went wide. Father? I watched the recordings from the final battle. I saw how you fought together, how you were willing to die together rather than abandon each other. The Emperor looked at Jake. You risked everything to save my daughter. Not because of duty or politics, but because you love her. I do, Your Majesty. More than my own life. And you, daughter. Yes, Father. I love him. The Emperor nodded slowly. Then I give you my blessing. If you wish to be together, I will not stand in your way. Prince Kael'thor made a sound of disgust. Father, this is madness. The court will never accept it. Then the court will learn to change, the Emperor said firmly. We have spent too long holding on to old hatreds and old ways. The galaxy is different now. We must be different too, or we will be left behind. He placed a hand on Lyravel's shoulder. You are my daughter, and I love you. I want you to be happy. If this human makes you happy, then he has my approval. Lyravel threw her arms around her father. Jake stood awkwardly to the side, not sure what to do. The Emperor smiled at him over his daughter's shoulder. Take care of her, Major Sullivan. She is more precious than you know. I will, Your Majesty. I promise. 1 year later, Jake and Lyravel stood at a memorial on Vendar. It was a simple monument made of stone from both Earth and the Vielrian homeworld, carved with the names of those who died in the war, human names and Vielrian names together, united in sacrifice. Jake wore his dress uniform with his new rank insignia. He was now a full colonel and served as the main liaison between the Terran coalition and the Vielrian Empire. Lyravel stood beside him in her own uniform, no longer just a commander but an admiral. She had been given command of the first joint exploration fleet that would venture beyond known space, seeking new worlds in peace instead of war. Kyle would have liked this, Jake said, touching the memorial where his friend's name was carved. He would have made a joke about it, Lyravel agreed. Probably about how we finally stopped arguing. We still argue. But now we argue about where to have dinner, not about whether humans are worthy of respect. Jake smiled and took her hand. She still wore his compass on a chain around her neck. He still carried her crystal pendant in his pocket. Their relationship was not easy. There were cultural differences that confused them both. There were people on both sides who disapproved. There were days when the distance between their worlds felt too great to cross. But they had survived war and death and separation. They could survive anything together. The CERMed in anything together. Ready to go? Lyravel asked. Their ship would leave tomorrow for the unexplored regions, beginning a mission that would last 2 years. Ready, Jake said. They walked away from the memorial hand in hand, two people from different worlds who had found each other in the chaos of war. The alien princess who had hated humans had learned that love was stronger than prejudice. The human soldier who had lost everything had found a new home in her heart. Above them, the stars waited. A whole galaxy of mysteries and wonders yet to be discovered. But whatever they found out there, they would find it together. And that was all that mattered.